I want to talk today about some of the people that are well known in the UFO community. And what I perceive or what I'm grasping as their take on the consciousness aspect of UFOs. Um, I'm into the non-duality aspect of consciousness itself. And I talked about that in my previous videos, how non-duality goes beyond oneness. It's beyond duality and beyond oneness to something else. And if you want to, I should do a video where I just talk about definitions of non-duality. But there's a lot of really good YouTube videos on non-duality itself, and you can check those out if it interests you. Some of the people I want to talk about are who talk about consciousness and UFOs are Dr. Stephen Greer, of course, and David Icke has his take on it, Grant Cameron, uh, and Richard Dolan. Even Richard Dolan doesn't really talk about consciousness too much. He's mentioned he has a kind of a Zen view of the whole phenomenon. He's kind of middle of the road. He just in his demeanor, there seems to be a great openness, no real demand from him to believe anything one way or another. He's a skeptic himself, but he's done enough research to say, hey, there's something going on here and it needs ongoing investigation and disclosure. But I'm probably closest with Richard Dolan, just because he doesn't say much about consciousness, but it seems to. Richard Dolan seems to, his demeanor and the way he approaches um, topics and questions is is very open-minded, as I see it. He does have kind of a Zen approach and attitude and worldview, I think. Um, maybe that's all I want to say about Richard. Doesn't, from what I've seen, he doesn't talk a lot about consciousness. Um, again, uh, uh, again, it's more his behavior that exposes what he's about in that regard. Look at some of the other people. Grant Cameron is a real consciousness guy, and he's talked about how he received a download informing him that the UFO phenomenon is primarily based in consciousness. Um, and by a download, it means as I have experienced them, it's a sudden knowledge that seems to come out of nowhere, literally nowhere, and it's something that's important. You recognize as being important, and that you need to follow. There's something choiceless about it. Like you have no choice but to pursue this um, download, this kind of falling into your lap of something, information of some sort. Uh, so I understand that people do get these so-called downloads. Really, I mean, if anyone wants to know how to live your life, just follow the downloads. You only get a couple of them in your life. Just follow them, and you'll feel that you're following a true path. The download is following the download is choiceless, and you can even quote Jiddu Krishnamurti and say it's pathless. So because when every moment of your activity is meaningful to its highest degree, then there's really no path. In time, you can look back and you say, well, this happened and that insight happened and that understanding evolved, and it can be called a path. But when you're on a pathless path, you're just in one place. You're not on a horizontal walk, you're more on a vertical. You're more responding to a vertical download. Um, And that's what you're attuned to. You're attuned to the vertical, not the horizontal, not the linear. You're attuned to the nonlinear. So I accept and I respect that Grant Cameron had to download, and it informed him that consciousness is an important part of the UFO phenomenon. I haven't, watched all of Grant's videos, and I haven't read everything. I'm not in touch with everything he says, but from what I've seen, he probably wants to go more and more into what he means by consciousness. Just get more granular about it, because it seems, from what I've seen him talk about, Grant's take on consciousness is just a little. It needs to be sharpened a little. So we'll see what else he talks about, or Grant might become like a Richard Dolan guy and just live out his investigation of UFOs and subtle phenomena without even talking about consciousness. Because if it's really a consciousness phenomenon, and he knows that, there's nothing really to pursue except that download, except to recognize that download and the importance of it, and then to just live his life. He doesn't really have to. You don't really have to talk about consciousness. You just have to live out your life, and what you've downloaded will come through, and it'll be imparted, and it'll be communicated. So you don't have to be explicit about it, but some people are, and the most explicit person when it comes to talking about consciousness and UFOs, as far as I know, is Dr. Stephen Greer. He does a great job, really great job, because he was really, his investigation of truth, if you will, really was grounded in his own study of the Vedas as, I think, a teenager. So he's really immersed in consciousness. And he's very granular about it. He talks about how consciousness manifests in different levels of different layers. He gets in a lot of detail about it. He gets into the non-duality, but like many people in consciousness fields, when you listen to them, you're still walking away with something, an idea, a concept, a structure, a formation, a formulation. And when you're walking away from something, in a lecture on consciousness, that's a sign that the non-dual hasn't been communicated. Because if the non-dual is being communicated, you don't walk away with something more than what you came in with. You walk away with less than what you came in with. Less concepts, less beliefs, less ideas, less new paths to take. So that's kind of a hallmark for anyone, again, investigating UFOs and non-duality. Still, I like Stephen Greer's work, and it's worth pursuing. Not everyone's interested in the teachings of non-duality right off the bat. They want to know what a guy like Greer is teaching. They want to know about different levels of consciousness. And it's good to know about it. You can always let it go. It's always, in the end, it's no different than, your Big Mac or your whatever or anything else, any other object or concept or experience. But it's still worth knowing. It's still worth knowing. It can make your life better, and that's good. Better life is always good. So I like Stephen Greer, and he has free videos on YouTube that you could watch and learn about his how he structures consciousness. And then finally, I always want to mention David Icke. Controversial guy because he has political opinions that aren't popular. So I don't agree with everything he says. He has two strong themes in his teachings that are really worth looking at and investigating. One theme is to question everything. That's might be the primary theme. I think it is the primary theme of all of David Icke's extensive work that he's been doing for the last, like, I think 30 years or so, is to question everything, question authority. So who can argue about that? I think, he could go further with that. I don't think he ever says, to question himself. I don't know if he says that or not. Maybe that's implicit, but it needs to be explicit. I'd certainly say that any stuff I'm talking about should be questioned. What do I know? And that means you have to question yourself. Why wouldn't you question yourself? And then the question from that is how do you question yourself? So that's what I would layer on top of David Icke's theme of questioning authority. I'd add the layer of question him, then add another layer of question yourself. And the question to ask yourself could be, what the heck am I anyway? What is the nature and the substance and the reality of the one who's questioning authority? So I don't see David Icke going that far. I don't see any of those guys I mentioned suggesting that. And I don't know how you can understand these alien beings and their deepest nature without understanding yourself. So, but I'm just putting that out there. A lot of teachers, even in the non-duality field itself, don't really want you to become awakened or enlightened. They want you to be dependent on them. So is that true for Icke and Greer and Dolan and Cameron? I don't know. I mean, I think we all, to some degree, there's the ego operating. We need an audience. We need to magnetize our audience and keep our audience, get money from our audience, quite frankly. And so that's a reality. So holding to David Icke's theme of questioning authority, question. Start by questioning David Icke. So there's two themes to David Icke's teaching. One is to question authority, and it's a great theme. He's freed a lot of people in that way, just through that. I don't know if they've gone far enough, but he's freed a lot of people to a good degree. And then his other theme is, he says that your true nature is infinite awareness. And that's great, because that's basically non-dual. And again, he needs to, he could have polished that up a bit, because, really, what is infinite awareness? Infinite awareness isn't the awareness that we talk about when we talk about a journey to non-duality, discovering that you are awareness itself. That discovery doesn't say you're infinite awareness. And to say that awareness is infinite then is to give it a quality. And the whole point of a full understanding is to realize, is not to hold on to things that have qualities and concepts and structures. When you go to that UFO consciousness lecture, you want to walk out with less concepts. So a concept of infinite awareness, you don't need it. David Icke could be saying that your true nature is awareness itself, and that, and then guide you to understanding that. And Stephen Greer does a pretty good job of that through meditations to lead you to discovering your true nature as awareness itself. I don't know if Stephen Greer, I don't really know what Stephen Greer's objective is. I think it's to communicate with extraterrestrial beings. I don't know if it's to become self-realized. So those are some of the people that I've observed, and they're all doing a great job. Not that it's up to me to judge anyone or to proclaim them good, bad, or otherwise. but just giving my opinion. And those are my perceptions. And if you want to, if this non-duality stuff makes some sense to you, or if anything I said makes some sense to you, just investigate. You can investigate non-duality, investigate any of the people I talked about, but just don't let it be an avoidance of investigating yourself. You know what you are. What are you? This is the ongoing. This is the primary investigation. We can't understand what's going on with other beings anywhere until we understand ourselves.